Welcome to another edition of Current Affairs Taiwan. And Donovan, what do we have on store for us today?
All right, we got quite a bit on this action-packed show. We've got the Huang Jie Recall has passed Phase 1. That's the NPP city councilor in Kaohsiung. SHYI-KUN is the new legislative speaker. William Lai will be joining a prayer breakfast in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. Congress. President Trump generally attends those breakfasts, so our vice president-elect may meet Mr. President Trump.
Interesting.
There's a petition at the White House which has passed the threshold for an official response from the White House on admitting or promoting allowing Taiwan into the World Health Organization. A bunch of countries have come out both in support of Taiwan and not in support of Taiwan as regards the WHO. The State Department of the United States has issued a very strongly and interestingly worded statement, and Hao Long-bin has gone full-throated anti-commie. Welcome back to Current Affairs Taiwan. I'm Donovan Smith, and I can't read a calendar. It turns out Mike is not back from the Philippines yet, but my hero, Scott Ellinger, came down all the way from Taipei.
So again, my avatar says Michael Turton. I'm Scott J. Ellinger. Nice to meet you.
All right. This show is sponsored by Tainan May Jam. This year is the 20th anniversary of this free all-original music festival. This year, it is May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Check out mayjam.com or Tainan May Jam on Facebook. It's a great event. Definitely check it out. All right. So we'll kick off with the Huang Jie Recall. To provide a little context, the Hanguoyu's fans, have launched a recall against Huang Jie, who is a NPP city councilor in Kaohsiung.
Oh, interesting.
She's a very famous. She's very famously critical of Hanguoyu.
Oh yes, so, I've seen her on the news and in the news talk shows. I've seen her quite a bit.
Yeah, she is of the famous eye roll when she got exasperated questioning him in the city council. So
I did an eye roll, by the way. I tried to do one.
Oh yeah.
Eye roll.
Okay.
Fun by yen. Didn't work very well.
All right. So they passed according to UDN report, they've passed the very first step, the first stage, which they got 1% of the voting public.
Okay. And how many votes was that? I think it's like 2,900 or 2,800.
Yeah, it was
2,800
and something.
This is in the Fengshan district, correct?
Yes, that's
okay.
Right. Yeah. So now this is going on against the backdrop of the recall against Kaohsiung Mayor Han Kuo-yu. Now, that has reached the second stage.
Yes.
So if they can get 300,000, their target is to get 300,000, I believe it was, signatures by the end of February. They've already had, by January 30th, in the first 3 days, they already had 80,000. So that seems to be proceeding. So that recall vote could be coming up as early as April, May, or June, depending.
I heard from the talk shows and all the commentators. They've discussed. I think it's May or June will be the window. That's the earliest.
Yeah, I've heard April, May, June. Yeah. So now the question is whether or not the Huang Jie recall will happen. Now, on my Facebook, a long-term resident, longer term than us, I believe he grew up here. I believe, at least partly. He lives in Kaohsiung, and he made some interesting comments.
Oh, and I think his name's Carl
Thelen or Thielen. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Probably Thielen.
Yeah. So he commented that the Fengshan district, because it has a lot of military base, and there are a lot of military families. So a lot of the old, post 1949.
Oh, are you talking about the
Fengshan district?
These are the KMT families and the KMT officers when they came here in 48. 49, and they just commandeered some of these old houses. You mean the military villages? So,
right. Yeah.
Okay, so I understand.
So he's saying there's a lot of them there, so he thinks that there's a pretty good chance that this recall against Huang Jie may win. Ultimately, what they need to do is they need to get 25% of the electorate out if they pass Phase 1 and Phase 2. If they actually get to a recall, then they need to get 25% of the electorate to vote to recall her.
Oh, she could be in trouble then. It depends on how deep blue these KMT families and how much they support.
Right.
And I think when before the show we started talking about that, and of course being former military and dealing with a lot of Taiwan military, the one thing I would like to comment on this, it would be reference. I don't know, those KMT families. That's 1948, 49, and 50, and they're very old, and probably most of them have passed away, but now you're in the third and fourth and fifth generation. And I know my experience in the Taiwan military, you can't count on the military being completely blue. I do know that during Huang Jie's term, there was quite a few military members, officers, we'll focus on the officers, that they weren't very pro Huang Jie, and they weren't very pro blue on that. I mean, they were, I wouldn't say they were pro green, but I could say that they were not happy with Huang Jie's handling of the military in 2009, 2010, 11, and 12. I mean, there were some pretty unhappy characters.
Yeah, well, military spending fell below 2% of GDP during his term. So.
Well, he just wasn't funding the military into the programs they wanted, and that's a whole issue on the all-volunteer force. And we've discussed this before. But I think that's something I wouldn't make that a main factor in the sense of if you want to count on that as a give me. So it's not a give me in this one. So I would be a little careful in that factor. So, I mean, Carl, he lives down there. We don't, but I'm just giving you my 2 cents reference. You can't guarantee that these KMT families will go blue and recall Huang Jie.
Right. Okay. All right. So SHYI-KUN has won the. He's technically it's the president of the Legislative Yuan, which we normally translate as the Speaker of the Legislature. Now he's interesting. He's an older guy. He was a former premier. He was also chairman of the party for a while.
Oh,
so he goes way back. He's 70 some odd years old. So he's an old guy. What's interesting about this is he's never been in the legislature before.
Interesting.
Yes. So that makes it, but he's the most senior member of the party in the legislature. So that's interesting, and I'm kind of curious as to what's going on with the Zhengguohui, which is the name rectification faction of the DPP. This is a grouping that used to be headed by SHYI-KUN. Then it kind of passed to Lin Jialong, the former mayor of Taichung, and he's now the transport minister.
Yes.
Right. So I'm not really sure what SHYI-KUN's position is, if he's back at the head of this or not. I'm not really sure. I'm kind of curious to see if I can figure that out. So hopefully we can find that out for you sometime in the next few weeks. So William Lai is the vice president-elect, Lai Ching-te, is going to the United States.
Oh. And what is he going for?
He's going for the Congressional Prayer Breakfast, which is often or usually also attended by the president.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So 2 + 2 = 5? No, 4. So, well, we'll see how this plays out. I know we were talking about this beforehand, and from my experiences in my DC circles, I will expect that he'll be meeting with, of course, all the senators and representatives that are very pro-Taiwan. So he'll meet definitely with all the caucus members, or Taiwan caucus members. He'll meet with definitely Ted Cruz. He'll meet with Marco Rubio, Einhoff, let's see,
Cory
Gardner. There's a list that are very pro, and I think they'll definitely meet him. The question is, what out of the cabinet members, as well as the appointed officials that are very, like the top 5. So you're looking at, president, vice president, national security advisor, maybe deputy National Security Advisor Matt Pottinger, Secretary of State or Deputy Secretary of State. Who out of this big, I don't think the Defense Secretary of Defense, that they won't be in this picture, but I would say in these top 5, who will show up and talk? What's your speculation?
I'd guess Pompeo.
Pompeo?
Yeah. He would be an obvious choice. He's been speaking pretty strongly on these issues.
Yeah, recently. I know if John Bolton was still national advisor. He definitely. I'm not sure O'Brien's opinion. I don't have a read on O'Brien and his opinion of Taiwan and where he is on what side is he on?
Right.
But I do know. I think Matt Pottinger. If I were to guess, Matt Pottinger will probably meet with William Lai on the side.
Now, what I really want to see is whether or not he interacts directly with President Trump. Now, President Trump did show up at the prayer breakfast last time. So there's and William Lai. Now he's the vice president elect. He's not. He won't be sworn into office at this point.
Yes.
But he is the former premier, and he is the incoming vice president. President Trump has attended these dinners, these breakfasts, traditionally.
We'll see where
So
it
there's
goes.
an opportunity here.
And like we talked in the show last week, the Taiwan Context show, which has not been posted yet, but you'll see it here come up pretty soon, is we did talk about the self-imposed restrictions that have been imposed on that the United States imposes on this U.S.-Taiwan relationship, and we'll see. Well, it doesn't fall under this self-imposed restriction model that the State Department carries over. So, well, William Lai is there as a civilian. So let's see how this plays out.
Actually, that's a good opportunity to pitch Taiwan Context, which will be coming out soon. Taiwan, in that show, what we talked about was, and you gave us some of the background and details on this, just in a nutshell, is that the U.S.'s one China policy does not preclude a whole lot of things which the State Department has imposed.
Correct.
In other words, it's self-imposed by the State Department.
And that's from 1979 and State Department and trying to figure out, okay, what kind of relationship are we supposed to have with Taiwan? And of course, they were pandering to that back then, the PRC and our relationship model that we had in reference. How are we going to subvert the Soviet Union? So that was part of that whole dynamic back then. But we'll see where on that. See if there's going to be some changes here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and because there's nothing in the One China policy which precludes the president from meeting Taiwan's president.
Nope,
there's nothing in there.
Not in the joint communiques, communique 1, 2, and 3, the 6 assurances. There's nothing in there that's written as U.S. policy or in the joint communiques. So, well, we'll see what happens the next couple of weeks. But again, we find everything on report.tw. So please go there to find everything. I'm just doing Michael Turton's normal moniker, and again, I got to do it this week. So
sure,
report.tw.
All right, so there's a petition. The U.S. government has petitions on the White House website.
Oh yes,
which there's been a petition for Taiwan to be, or the U.S. to push Taiwan to be admitted into the WHO, the World Health Organization. It passed the threshold, which means that normally the White House will respond within 60 days. Japan, Canada, and the U.S. have all come out in support of Taiwan being readmitted to observer status into the WHO.
Yeah.
Now, this is I thought this was very interesting. Joseph Wu, the foreign minister. Now, Italy banned all flights coming in from
Taiwan,
the PRC,
Hong Kong,
Macau, and Taiwan.
Yes.
Now, the speculation is that the reason why they included Taiwan in this is because of a WHO report. Now, it didn't say that you should restrict flights, but it was raising the alarm about China.
Well, I was watching the press conference, and so you could see it where Foreign Minister Joseph Wu, he'd have his little tablet right here, and he would draw it where Taipei is listed underneath the PRC as cities, and so it gets rolled up in the entire PRC roll up under WHO on all the affected cities of coronavirus. So I think that's so in Italy, probably somebody in their Ministry of Foreign Affairs or whoever handles this reference all the flights and everything, probably just doesn't have the education to understand the difference between Taiwan, Republic of China, and China, People's Republic of China. I don't think that person understood it and just made a carte blanche decision that anything that comes from these areas because of the report, hence Taiwan fell victim to the narrative that China always controls, hence the WHO. And I saw that, and that was I saw that on the TV press conference that Joseph was making his comments. What's interesting is he did it all in English, and he did, of course, on the side he'd do his Chinese, and then he took question and answer time, but then the news pushed off of it, and then went back into coronavirus reporting. So I didn't get how the reporters were asking questions, but it was very focused on where you could see the statements, and that's where it led, is that Taiwan's listed, Taipei's listed as a city of the PRC, and that's what made probably why Italy made this decision the way they did.
And of course, Joseph Wu's comments was that Italy was living in a parallel universe, parallel world, I think is the way he phrased it.
I wasn't focused. I was more focused on, where you have the city Taipei falls under all the PRC cities. That's what I was really focused on.
I think it was a fairly strong worded.
Yes.
Fairly strong worded, I thought. And essentially saying that Italy was living in a parallel world where Taiwan was part of China, which is obviously not true. So that was where he was going with that. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Current Affairs Taiwan. All right, so now the State Department issued something quite interesting.
Oh, yes, and it's and I'm a little surprised too, because in my experience in U.S. policy and my D.C. circle days, I have never really seen anything like this. So it's very interesting. So I'm going to read this here for our audience to get a better glimpse of what was said. So this is what it says. The title is ICAO's Outrageous Practice of Blocking Twitter Users Who Reference Taiwan. And some of the language in this statement, probably if I go back 10 years, 12 years in my time there in D.C., I've never seen anything written like this. And so when you go to this statement that you can find on State Department, it's published on February 1st, 2020, and the department spokesperson states it. And you can go down to the middle of the statement. It says, is outrageous, unacceptable, and not befitting of a UN organization. So I found that interesting. And then the second part, we call upon, so this is the State Department calling upon, ICAO to immediately and permanently reverse its practice of blocking discussion of Taiwan on its Twitter properties and make clear publicly its understanding that freedom of expression must always supersede the political insecurities of member states.
Now, I was one of those people that was banned pretty early by the ICAO.
Well, I don't have a Twitter account, so I really don't follow Twitter too much.
So you're feeling left out, I assume.
And my feelings were really hurt because I found out you were blocked. So I was hurt. And then Jessica was blocked. And
well, she was blocked before me, yeah.
And then I think Jody was also blocked, right? Cody.
Oh, Jenna Cody.
Yeah, Jenna Cody.
Yeah,
Cody.
She
was blocked too because I saw her Facebook post and she got blocked too.
Yeah.
So her feelings must be hurt too.
Yes.
Everybody's feelings are hurt. So there's 3 people our feelings got hurt. Maybe 4, including Jessica.
Mm-hmm. Actually, there's a bunch. The Michael Matz, Mazza.
Mazza?
Yeah.
In D.C.
He was another one. So there was a handful of people, definitely.
So we have more than 4 people got their feelings hurt.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes. So now this whole thing, the ICAO is headed by someone from the PRC. And the person in charge of their social media is from the PRC.
Yeah, and that's Guang Qining is the name. So Guang Qining is the person. So like last week, I didn't know if it was Guang Qining or Qi Ming, but it's Qining. Okay. But I don't know the Chinese characters. Guang is probably Guangzhou the Guang, but I'm not sure what the Qi or the Ning is in the characters. But I mean that's the name in English, and so I would be my wager of $200 US. I guarantee that's the person that blocked these accounts.
I would not take that bet.
Okay. But what, I'm going back to the statement, and normally we don't see state ever being this forceful against like a Beijing type of narrative. And so, as we talked last week about the narrative and controlling it, this is a pleasant surprise seeing the narrative starting to be controlled by the U.S. and pushing back hard against the Chinese narrative, which I hope in the future we can see this even more. And pushing this narrative of, Taiwan needs to be included in these international organizations specifically because this pandemic issue is, last week it was about 4,000 when we did the show last week, and now we're close to 18,000 on the number of cases of the coronavirus.
Officially.
Officially.
Yeah. The real count is probably higher than that because a lot of people are asymptomatic.
Yes.
So, and that's assuming that the PRC is telling the truth on those numbers, which we don't know for sure.
Question mark.
Now, I think it's very interesting the state came out with this very strongly worded thing. I feel like a lot of it started right around the time when President Trump came out with the comment about the PRC getting airlines to change the names and all of this, and he referred to it as Orwellian nonsense, which I actually thought was a pretty good turn of phrase.
Well, that's the correct term.
Yes.
Actually, it is. And so I think in State Department specifically, I think a lot of it's being pushed by Mike Pompeo.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably.
the actual Secretary of State. And I think he probably read this statement before it was released, and he may have done his own pencil changes on whoever the desk officer that writes the actual press release. And he probably made his little scribble marks, okay, I want to change this to this. And you could see that kind of language because that follows Pompeo's kind of his narrative and how he wants to deal with China. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's been the case, where he actually has been involved in actually reviewing before it went out. So I'd put a good wager on that one. But for me, I really, this is what we need to see, and we need to see. They don't need to bash China, but what they need to do, it's there to show support for Taiwan to be in the organizations where it deals with health and safety and public safety and anything that's that causes, well, let's go back to safety or a medical issue worldwide. So I think in the next month or two, I think we might see some dynamic changes for Taiwan. That's just my 2 cents.
That would be very interesting to see. And if and the Trump administration doesn't seem to be doing a very good job of this, but if they can work in conjunction with allies, like-minded allies, Japan, the UK, Canada, possibly some other EU countries, if they can all come together, possibly Vietnam, if they can all come together and push simultaneously for major improvements with the relationship with Taiwan, it'd be very, very hard for the PRC to they scream bloody murder, but what could they do about it?
Well, I saw in the news report on who actually the funding that's given to the WHO. The United States is number one. I can't remember who's number two, but then you look at China, it's only 7%. The United States, I think, is around 12 or 13 or 16%. I saw the numbers. I can't remember it. But China's not the number one funder. But for some reason, they have the biggest voice. Because when you look at the WHO and you look on the backsplash, where you have the, I don't know what you call him, the director, or who's the head of the WHO. I'm not sure what his title is, secretary of it. But behind him, right behind his left ear, you can see it's it's Chinese and it's simplified characters. So you could see it. So it's been placed just right. So whoever's handling public affairs there, they put it so you can see it just like where my left ear is. You could see it just parallel, or it's either the right ear or the left ear. You can see it'll say World Health Organization in Mandarin, but it's simplified. It's right there. It's very, very obvious that somebody put it there for a specific reason.
Well, what I was actually referring to is just more in general.
Yeah.
I mean, with organizations like that, you often need unanimous or there's certain qualifications, so it would be tough to do that. But I saw a very interesting suggestion in an article a few weeks ago about the United States. I'm trying to remember where I saw it, but the suggestion was that the United States could actually choose an ambassador at large for Taiwan.
You could probably do that.
They could do that because they have these ambassador at large. It's a title. It's a thing. Usually they have it addressed to a specific topic, but they could actually do that because it would not be an ambassador to a country. It would be but it would be legally an ambassador.
Interesting, because right now you have the chairman of AIT, which is the figure. It's the I don't know if you call it appointed a position, but it's a position that's held on top of AIT Taipei and AIT Washington, and so it's kind of a figurehead position. The person doesn't control anything or doesn't represent anything except for representing the voice of the executive branch with Taiwan. And I mean, that's kind of who the ambassador in large equivalent may be, but you don't see that. It's the title, the ambassador at large. And I think that might be something Mike Pompeo could probably finish.
Well, see,
and put together.
Yeah, the difference is AIT is a commercial entity. It's not technically part of the State Department, although people can keep their state email addresses and there's all that.
It's a nonprofit organization.
Right. And so, if they appointed an ambassador at large, this would be a legal position.
Yeah, and it
would be a State Department ambassador level figure.
And then in D.C., they have the discussions that they want to have confirmation of whoever the director will be, because currently, from what I recall, is the director of AIT Taipei is selected within State Department. So it's an internal decision. There's no oversight from Congress, no oversight from the normal ambassador assignments and the nominations. You have to go get cleared through Congress and the senators, I think, and have that confirmed. So this one, you're appointed and you go. So, and it's always been a State Department person. So it's never been like a person outside brought in. So it's always been a State Department internal person.
All right, switching gears because I want to get to this before we run out of time. Now, this is very interesting. Huang Jie, the former Taipei mayor, he is running for the chair position of the KMT chair. And he came out and said some interesting things here. So I'm going to read this.
Can you let me know what's interesting?
Certainly. All right. So, quote from Huang Jie. Should Beijing refuse to acknowledge the ROC, then we no longer need to interact with them. That's interesting.
Okay, hold on. I roll. Okay,
quote,
continue.
If our goodwill is not reciprocated in kind and we do not receive dignified treatment as an equal partner, why should we continue? If that happens, then there is no need to maintain postal services, commercial services, or transportation services with China. We can consider other alternatives.
What are those other alternatives?
I guess going back to the way it used to be. Removing the 3 links, everything goes via Hong Kong.
Continue with your statement.
So I think that...
Okay, continue with the quotes.
However, Han said that the KMT does not want that situation to occur. Quote, we should not have to force each other to back down, Hao said, adding that he hoped Beijing would offer Taiwan some respect and goodwill. Quote, some party members have indeed backed down too much, he said, referencing the perception that the KMT was often weak when facing the Chinese Communist Party. Hao said that some Pan-Blue supporters, not necessarily politicians, might have acted in a less than dignified manner while in pursuit of economic benefits from China. We cannot continue to do so. Now, he also went on to say the basic consensus on both sides of the Taiwan Strait is the 1992 consensus. However, the basis of that agreement has been undermined by the DPP's denial of the consensus's validity, calling it the, quote, one country, two systems concept, while Beijing flatly refuses to acknowledge the ROC.
Hold on, I have to do an eye roll.
Okay. The KMT should debate whether its cross-strait policies require revision as consensus between the two sides of the strait, as well as between the KMT and CCP appears to be over, he said.
Wow.
Right. This is big. Now, here's the interesting thing, is he's sounding like moving much closer to a position. If China will not acknowledge the Republic of China, we're moving back to Cheng Jingguo era here, early Li Denghui era.
This goes back to, like I talked about, you have the first generation, the second generation KMTers.
Now, he's second generation.
He's second generation. He's talking, I think he might have listened to our conversation last week that his parents would be rolling in the grave of the behavior of these second generation children.
Well, his actually, I have the opposite take. His father's Hao Po-chun.
Mm-hmm.
He was the head of the military. He was a premier for a while. I think he was the vice presidential candidate for the New Party back in the day. He's much more old school. I think this is deep deep blue, which is what Hao was talking
about. Well, I think what I mean by first generation is, being anti-communist and being nationalist and pro-ROC, and we're going to retake the mainland, and so that's what I mean, because that's the anti-communist part of what the KMT is all about. Where the second generation, they forgot anti-communist. Now they're just pro-communist because of all the business and economic things that got them so intertwined and being almost turncoats to their parents of being anti-communist. And so this is a very typical response that you would see in a first generation.
Yeah.
The initial 1949, 1950 generation that came over here. So that's kind of shocked when you're reading this to me prior to the show today.
Yeah, I mean it's stunning to see, because this is a much stronger anti-communist stance than you've seen out of the KMT in a long time. It's in keeping with the ROC nationalism, but cutting postal links, cutting the 3 links that Ma built. That was Ma's big. Now the mini link started under Chen Shui-bian, and he laid the groundwork. But it was really Ma Ying-jeou, using the 1992 consensus, that really pushed this thing through. So this is really quite an interesting shift.
It's a strong change. Yeah. So you said stronger. I'm going to go, it's very strong change in the narrative that you've heard from the Blue Camp for the last, for the last 12 years. This is a very big change than what you've seen under Ma and the 4 years that they've been out of power. I don't know what to say. I'm lost.
All right.
Can you continue speaking for me?
All right. Well, why don't we end on that? And I want to encourage everybody to tune in next week. We're going to be following the latest developments, what's going on in the KMT chair race, which is going to be very interesting. The candidates should be finalized by then, so we'll know what to expect. I have a 3-part series. Part 1 is already out on the KMT chair race in Ketagalam Media. Be sure to check that out. Parts 2 and Parts 3 are coming out soon. They're already written, already submitted. So look forward to those, and tune in next week.
And you'll find everything on that'sreport.tw, and Michael will be back next week, and he'll probably have a lot of suntan, and so he'll be looking pretty good.
All right.
This has been brought to you by the Taiwan Report. For more content like this, become our patron at report.tw.
哎呦，就是那个台湾狗啦，最喜欢我的台湾狗了。
Current Affairs Taiwan in Taichung. Donovan, start the show, please. Yes, my lord. Yes, my lord.
Sure.
Do I need the button or not? If I can button up more?
Yeah, I don't know. So I guess. Oh, right.
Much better.